catastrophic floods swept through parts of Tennessee.
There's houses moved off their foundation, cars. I mean, this is almost a biblical proportions here, like a massive tornado come through here.
This is a spot that I just visited yesterday in Humphreys County, Tennessee.
It just came.
Let's back up a little bit. There. Horrible.
It just came so fast, and I packed a bag as quick as I could for all of us. And next thing I know, the water's in my house, and it's up to my chest. And my house fell off the foundation while we were still in it, so we had to break the window in the kitchen and crawl out of it and get up on the roof as fast as we could. My yard filled up, and I'm like, okay, it's going to go back down, it'll be okay. And then all of a sudden, it was like a tidal wave that just came over the road and into my yard and swept my house away. It was so fast and so devastating.
Terrifying situation there, and that was Casey Hipshire describing the devastating floods in Tennessee. At least 21 people were killed and around 20 others are still missing after floodwaters swept through part of the state. Almost all the people who died were found in the small town of Waverly, west of Nashville. On Sunday, authorities described how heartbreaking this has been for the community.
You know, they just went and got one of my best friends. It's recovered him when he drowned in this, and it's sitting here thinking about that. Yeah, it's tough, but we're gonna move forward. Yeah, it's the hard part. You know, with a small town, small community, we know each other, we love each other. You know, and I've always said one of our biggest assets in this county is when bad things happen, our people, when rubber meets the road, our people are going to come out, and they're out.
And right now, search efforts are continuing for those still missing. Meanwhile, the long road to recovery is just beginning. CNN's Nick Valencia is in Humphreys County with more.
The governor of Tennessee called it devastating, and looking at the images, you can certainly understand why. We tried to make our way in safely to the hardest hit area, but encountered washed out roads and down bridges and the remnants of the severe storm system that moved through Humphreys County over the weekend. According to the National Weather Service, 17 inches of rain fell in the span of 24 hours. And talking to residents, they say it felt like somebody was outside of their home with a fire hose and just relentless, that water just continuing to come down. 3 inches of rain consecutive for 3 hours straight. The devastation is all around, and as the week begins, the cleanup will continue. Over the weekend, search and rescue crews went door to door trying to account for the missing. Dozens of missing are still unaccounted for. And according to local eyewitnesses, there was a housing project behind a Dollar General store where several residents they saw tried to make their way to the rooftops but were swept away by the water. This week will continue with a lot of search and recovery effort in the days ahead. Nick Valencia, CNN, Humphreys County, Tennessee.
And in the northeastern U.S., Henri has weakened to a tropical depression, but the storm is still expected to produce heavy rainfall and flooding across the region in the hours ahead. So let's bring in meteorologist Pedram Javaheri. So, Pedram, what are you seeing in the forecast for this tropical depression, and how bad do you think it may be?
You know, Rosemary, once the sun comes up in the next couple of hours, I do expect the atmosphere to destabilize a little bit and thunderstorms to flourish a little bit more. At this hour, we're seeing conditions quiet down just a tad here as we're seeing, of course, the daytime heat wane. But again, with the sunrise here, expecting thunderstorms coverage to pick up in intensity across a large area of the northeastern U.S. And kind of looking at the historic track of Henri, really took the scenic route south of Bermuda, skirted farther toward the west, looked like a potential southern U.S. landfall, and then making a sharp right turn, Category 1 at one point, making landfall as a tropical storm. And now once again pushing back inland before we expect it to make a sharp right turn back out over the open waters. With all that said, quite a bit of rainfall in place, gusty winds at times gusting up to 70 miles per hour, strong enough to leave upwards of 100,000 customers in the height of the storm without power, and still watching flood watches here widespread around parts of New England. Rainfall amounts in millimeters, 200 plus, that's about 8 to 9 inches. across areas of Brooklyn into Cranberry, New Jersey. And again, we're coming off of a historic month of July for New York State and into Massachusetts for the wettest month of July on record. So any additional rainfall here on Monday afternoon is going to be problematic. And I do expect another couple of inches on top of the 8 to 9 that has fallen in this region. So the Weather Service here has pushed the level of concern up to a 3 out of 4 for excessive flooding risk. That is in place there across the Northeast. But, you know, we talked about flooding also happening in portions of Tennessee, and the rainfall there, as remarkable as it gets. In fact, you look at some of the observations in McEwen coming in with 17 inches, the preliminary number. This is out of McEwen in central Tennessee on Saturday afternoon. An incredible amount for 24-hour totals, comes in as the wettest 24-hour period on record, shattering the previous record for the entire state, which sat at 13 inches. And statistically, this is a 1 in 1,000 year event, which means 1 in 1,000 chance it would happen in any given year, or a 0.1% chance this sort of a pattern, this sort of rainfall would take place across this region of Tennessee. That is an incredible amount of moisture in the atmosphere to be brought down to the surface. And of course, we've seen the results there with fatalities and widespread destruction with tremendous rainfall in place, Rosemary.
Yeah, absolutely. Meteorologist Pedram Javaheri, many thanks. Bring us up to date on that. Well, it didn't take long for the floodwaters to rise once Henri made landfall on Sunday. CNN's Brian Todd travelled to Connecticut to assess more of the damage from this storm.
Just before Tropical Storm Henri passed through this area of New London and Groton, Connecticut, we talked to local officials, mayors and fire chiefs who said they were worried about storm surge, about flooding in low-lying areas, and also about power lines down and trees being down. Well, I just talked to the fire chief of New London. He says by and large they may have dodged a bullet as far as flooding, storm surge, and that kind of damage, but some houses, he said, had some damage like this one. Down trees coming down on top of this house. This is on Montauk Avenue here in New London. Look at that tree, came crashing down on this older house. I just talked to the homeowner, Nate Hall, who told me he was home when this happened and heard the crash, went to the window, saw that tree there, came down and assessed some of the damage. He saw some of these power lines down around his house. So still not quite a safe situation here, even though he was uninjured and no one in the house was injured by this. And no one in the town, fortunately, has been reported injured in the storm so far, by the way. But he said one fortunate thing is that this house is so solidly built that it didn't seem to cause a whole lot of damage on this roof up here. It came crashing down and hit that part of the roof, but if you can see, it didn't collapse. And a large part of the tree snapped and came down here. So you've got that damage, and he's assessing that and getting ready to call his insurance company to come and try to help him out that way. Again, power lines down here, and we do know that there are power lines down throughout the city. Over here is where the homeowner told me that the power got knocked out. You see the dangling wires up there on that pole. That's where the power got knocked out in this neighborhood. So you've got that to deal with in many of these neighborhoods here in New London. And again, this area was so saturated with water already with recent storms in recent weeks that you had situations like this. This is what the local officials were worried about here in New London and Groton, Connecticut, that they'd had so much rain, the ground was saturated, that any small amount of wind could pick up a tree and bring it down on a house like this one. So that's what happened here. But by and large, officials here in New London and in Groton are pretty thankful right now that they dodged most of what they anticipated would be major damage from this storm. Brian Todd, CNN, New London, Connecticut.
You know, we take for granted every day in regards towards the weather, similar towards how we do our health until after we lose our health. After we lose our health, then we realize that we have been negligent in appreciating our health. Well, it's the same way with good weather. You know, we don't thank God enough for the good weather, and then whenever the bad weather comes, we can identify real quick that we was doing the weather similar like we was doing our health towards not appreciating it until something like this occurred. I just got through leaving this area yesterday, and the pictures actually are the pictures don't show enough clarity towards the damage, not only the structural physical damage, but also the emotional anguish that this town is suffering through right now in regards to this unprecedented storm that come in there and just started dumping just one storm after another storm after another storm on top of it. I think they said that Loretta Lynn's Dew Ranch, that she had lost her foreman in a death that basically brought devastation into her area. Matter of fact, the road getting up to the Dew Ranch house was washed completely out, give or take probably about, I'm going to say 500 or 600 feet of the spillway that was washed completely out, that I don't even know how that you could get to her house unless you come through it on the back way, coming down through Duck River and the Buffalo River down through the back way would be basically the only way to get in there to her house, other than maybe a helicopter. But it was devastating, of unproportional performances that I have personally never seen in regards to a massive flood like that. A flash flood that comes and goes in such of an area that I had been familiar with, that I didn't think that I would ever see in my lifetime, that basically lost right at half of the structures in that town that is probably unrepairable, and at least 22 had been found dead as of late yesterday evening whenever I left from there, in regards to search and rescue. Once more, the Bible talks about how that these occurrences would take place in the last days, representing or identifying the grief, the relentless grief that the heavenly kingdom is demonstrating because of all the sin and the wickedness upon the society down here upon to the planet. It says that these will be the signs, that we will see signs up in the heavens and signs upon the earth such as we've never seen before in the last days, identifying the grief because of all the wickedness and all the sin of humanity. And you know, we go from one extreme towards having entirely too much rain to going out west here in America and not having enough towards seeing all the fires. So once more, it's the Bible fulfilling itself in regards towards seeing these things that are occurring that we've never ever seen before. According to the Bible, these are all the sorrows that Mother Nature is demonstrating to society because of the ungodliness, the wickedness that humanity has brought upon to itself. Good luck to all of us. Let's pray for those who have been victimized by all the intense storms or the fires out west. Pray for the victims in Afghanistan and continue to try to help either in monetary funds or in other ways towards being able to help the victims in all these areas. Thanks again. And as the Windmill Ministries always says at the end, God bless you and God bless America. God bless our troops, and good luck to all of us.